John had always prided himself on his ability to handle tough situations. As an engineer working on a distant research station, he was no stranger to being isolated, surrounded only by the quiet hum of machinery and the vast emptiness of space. But today, something was different. Something had gone terribly wrong. The station had been hit by an unknown force. One moment, everything was working fine, and the next, alarms were blaring, the lights flickering, and the ground shaking beneath him. The air supply had been compromised. The power was unstable, and worse, the station's communication system had gone offline. With no way to reach his team or anyone else, John was completely alone. He quickly checked the emergency systems, but nothing was responding. The backup generators were barely holding up, and the life support systems were running on borrowed time. Sweat trickled down his face as he realized the gravity of his situation. There was no one coming, no help on the way. He was stranded in the cold, empty darkness of space, with no way to signal for help. He had to try something. Desperation clawed at his mind as he stumbled to the control room. His fingers flew over the panel, trying to make contact with any ship, station, or outpost within range. His voice cracked as he spoke into the comm system. "Mayday. Mayday. This is John Harper. I need assistance. Can anyone hear me?" His voice echoed in the empty room. He repeated the message, hoping for any response, but the comms remained silent. His eyes darted around the room, looking for a solution that wasn't there. His pulse quickened as time seemed to stretch longer and longer with each passing second. Then, just as he began to lose hope, a strange sound cut through the static. It was a voice, smooth and chilling, yet undeniably commanding. "Human, I hear you." John's heart skipped a beat. His hand froze on the comms panel as the voice echoed in his mind. It wasn't the response he was expecting. He stared at the screen, expecting to see a distress signal or an incoming transmission from another human station, but there was nothing. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice trembling, a mix of relief and suspicion flooding him. "You called for help," the voice continued, unbothered by his confusion. "I am here." John frowned, trying to understand what was happening. The voice was soft, but held a strange authority. He wasn't sure if he was hearing this correctly, but he had no choice but to keep listening. Are you from another station? Can you help me?" he asked, desperation creeping into his tone. There was a brief silence before the voice answered again. "I can help, but not in the way you might expect." John's eyes widened. There was something strange about the way she spoke. It wasn't like any human he had ever heard before. The words were too smooth, too polished, almost like a melody. He couldn't explain it, but the way she said "expect" sent a shiver down his spine. "Who are you?" John asked again, his voice firmer now. "I need to know who's on the other end." A soft chuckle echoed through the comms, but it wasn't a comforting sound. It was cold, as if it didn't belong. "I am someone who can give you what you need," she replied cryptically. "I can help you survive, but the price will be high." John felt a chill run down his spine, the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. The words didn't sit right with him. "Price? What do you mean by price? Who are you really?" Her laughter was almost mocking now. "I'm someone who has been waiting for you, waiting for a human in need." "Where are you?" John asked, now wary of her every word. This was no simple rescue. "You're speaking to me through the comm system, but you will find me soon enough," she answered smoothly. "When you accept my help, you will see me." John felt his heart race as he processed her words. A voice that seemed too calm, too controlled. It wasn't what he expected. He had hoped for a rescue team, a fleet of ships, or even an automated drone. But this was something else. He was being offered help by a mysterious stranger whose intentions were unclear. "Are you human?" he asked cautiously, though he already feared he knew the answer. The pause on the other side was long, and when she responded, it was almost as if she were savoring his fear. "Human. No, I am much more. The voice was low and sensuous, sending an uncomfortable thrill through him. I am a being of the night, a creature of power, and I can give you what you need to survive. John's stomach tightened. He wanted to refuse, to disconnect, to try something else. But a part of him, the desperate, terrified part, couldn't ignore the strange pull in her voice. He was running out of time. The air supply was running low, and the power was on the verge of failing. "How can you help me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The alien woman's voice softened. "I can save you, but you must listen carefully. You will have to pay for my help." John swallowed hard. What kind of payment? His pulse quickened. "You will find out soon enough," she said cryptically, her tone dripping with mystery. "But for now, focus on your survival." John stared at the comm system, his mind racing. He was on the verge of collapse, the air thinning, the temperature dropping, and his only chance of survival was this alien who spoke in riddles. Could he trust her? Could he afford not to? He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, and then spoke the words that would change everything. "I accept your help." There was a long silence. Then the voice replied with chilling finality. "Good. Prepare yourself, human. I will be there soon." John sat there, his fingers still resting on the comms panel. The words the alien woman had spoken echoed in his mind, each one more confusing than the last. He had called for help, and now he was getting more than he bargained for. A strange, eerie feeling crept up his spine as he waited for the alien's next move. The voice on the comms was silent for a moment, but John could feel the presence of the woman on the other side, like she was waiting for him to react, to make the next decision. His heart pounded in his chest, and his mind raced with questions. What had he just agreed to? Who was she really? And how had she known so much about his situation? The air felt heavy around him, and the silence in the room only made the tension worse. His hands trembled slightly, but he forced himself to take a steady breath. "Are you coming here?" he asked, his voice almost too soft, unsure if he even wanted to hear the answer. The alien woman's voice came again, this time softer, like a whisper against the comms. "Yes, I am, but it will take time for you to truly understand what I am, what I offer." John's mind spun. "What do you want from me?" he asked, not sure if he wanted to hear that answer either. "I want nothing that you cannot give," she replied smoothly. "I will provide what you need, but in return, you must give me what I seek." John furrowed his brow, the unease growing in his chest. "What do you seek?" he pressed, though part of him wished he hadn't asked. Her laugh was soft but chilling. "I seek only what I am owed, human," she said cryptically. "You will understand when the time comes." The comms fell silent again. John didn't know whether to feel relieved or even more afraid. There was something about her, her calm, the way she spoke, the way her presence seemed to fill the room, even through the comms, that made him uneasy. Yet, deep down, he knew he had no choice. He had no other options left. The station was falling apart, and his chances of survival were slipping away fast. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and the air was thin. He couldn't survive much longer without help. As the minutes ticked by, John paced back and forth in the small, dimly lit control room. His thoughts were a whirlwind. What had he gotten himself into? Could he trust this strange woman? And yet, with every passing second, he felt the pull of her offer, the desperate need for survival. His gaze shifted to the air supply meter, and his stomach dropped. The pressure was dropping too. Soon, there would be no air left at all. He swallowed hard, the weight of his situation sinking in. If he didn't act now, he wouldn't have any chance to survive. He glanced back at the comms panel, still flickering with static. "I accept your offer," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The alien woman's voice answered almost immediately, smooth and alluring, yet still chilling. "Good. You will live. But understand this. Survival is not free. You will pay the price when the time is right. For now, focus on your immediate need. John's chest tightened as he took in her words. What did that mean? What kind of payment would he have to make? He didn't know, but at this point, he didn't care. He was still alive, still breathing, and that was all that mattered. Where are you? He asked, his voice more desperate now, as the cold in the room became unbearable. Where do I meet you? You will not need to meet me yet, she replied. Not until the time comes for your payment. For now, you must wait. But do not fear, help is already on its way. John froze, his mind reeling. Wait, he asked, his voice cracking slightly. What do you mean? You will see, she replied cryptically, her tone soft but somehow confident. The moment will come when you understand. Until then, trust that I am watching over you. You will not be alone. John stood still, his mind racing. What was she saying? Was she really watching him? Could she be lying? He didn't have time for doubts. The air was getting thinner by the second, and the station was on the verge of collapse. He couldn't afford to waste any more time questioning her. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a strange hum filled the air. John looked around, confused. Was this the alien's doing? Was she somehow affecting the station? The hum grew louder, and then, as if in response to his fear, the temperature in the room seemed to drop even further. He wrapped his arms around himself, shivering, trying to fight the growing panic in his chest. A flash of light flickered in the corner of the room, and for a moment, John thought he saw something moving in the shadows. He turned sharply, his heart racing. There was nothing there, just the dim lights flickering above him. His breath came out in quick gasps, and he was about to call out when the voice of the alien woman came again. Do not fear, human, she whispered, as though she were right beside him. I am here. John's eyes widened in disbelief. Had she somehow entered the room? Was she playing tricks on him? His mind struggled to make sense of it all. But then, just as quickly as it started, the humming sound stopped. The cold air lifted slightly, and the station's systems began to hum back to life. Though weakly, a soft light, faint but reassuring, flickered back on. John blinked, still unable to fully comprehend what was happening. He looked at the comms panel once more, hoping to hear some explanation, but the alien woman's voice didn't come again. Confused and uncertain, John slowly sank to his knees in exhaustion. What had just happened? Was it real? He wasn't sure, but one thing was clear. His survival depended on this strange, alien woman. He had no choice but to trust her for now. The hours dragged on like a slow, suffocating fog. John sat in the control room, his eyes flicking to the dim screens that barely showed any useful information. The station was holding on, but it was clear it wouldn't last much longer. The temperature had dropped even further, and the air felt thin in his lungs. Every breath he took seemed more difficult than the last. His eyes were heavy, his body weak, but somehow he couldn't let go of the faint thread of hope that the alien woman had offered. He glanced at the comms panel. The strange voice of the alien vampire was still in his mind, her words repeating over and over again. You will survive, but the price will be high. What had he gotten himself into? The deal seemed like a gamble, but he had no other choice. The station was falling apart. Without her help, he knew he wouldn't last much longer. His only option now was to trust her, even though everything in him told him not to. John's thoughts were interrupted by a soft, almost musical voice in his ear. Are you ready to accept the terms of our arrangement? His heart skipped a beat. It was her again, the alien vampire. He was used to hearing her now, but it still made his skin prickle with unease. I've already accepted your help, John said, his voice barely above a whisper. But what do you want from me? What kind of price are we talking about here? The alien's voice was calm, unhurried. You are not in a position to negotiate, human. I offer you survival. You need it. And in return, I require something from you." John's stomach tightened. He knew this was coming. He had hoped that by agreeing, he could avoid this moment, but it seemed impossible now. "What is it?" he asked, though part of him dreaded hearing the answer. The alien's voice became soft, almost tender. "Your life. Not in the way you think, but your essence, your very being. I will take what I need, but not all at once. It will be a slow process, over time. You will live human, but you will give me something of yourself in exchange." John swallowed hard. The idea of giving up his essence, whatever that meant, was terrifying. It sounded like something from a nightmare, but the cold, desperate reality of his situation made him wonder if he had any choice. He leaned back in his chair, trying to think. He had never imagined something like this would happen, that he would be forced to make a deal with an alien vampire. Yet here he was, bargaining with something far more powerful and dangerous than he could comprehend. "I don't understand," he said, his voice filled with uncertainty. "What does that mean? How will you take my essence?" There was a long pause, and for a moment, John wondered if she had disappeared. Then the alien answered, her tone calm as ever. "It will not be painful, human. I do not take everything from you. I merely need enough to survive. You will give me what I require in small amounts over time, and in return, you will continue to live." John ran a hand through his hair, struggling to grasp the reality of the situation. "And if I refuse?" he asked. "What happens then?" The silence on the comm stretched for several seconds before the alien spoke again. "Refuse, and you will die here, alone. The station will fall, and you will have no one to help you." John shuddered, the cold seeping deeper into his bones. His mind raced. He wanted to say no, to refuse, to find another way. But deep down, he knew there was no other choice. He was alone, and the alien vampire was his only hope for survival. "What exactly will you take from me?" he asked, his voice small but firm. He had to know the details before he could make this final decision. "I will take only what I need," she answered. "Not enough to weaken you beyond repair, but you will feel the effects. Over time, you will grow more accustomed to my presence in your life, and when the time comes for me to take more, you will understand." John closed his eyes, trying to steady his racing thoughts. His survival was tied to this alien, this strange and dangerous creature. It was terrifying, but he couldn't deny the reality. He had no choice but to accept her terms. "I agree," he said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his insides. "I'll do whatever it takes. Just help me survive." "Good," the alien's voice purred, and for the first time, there was a hint of satisfaction in her tone. "You are wise, human. You understand the cost of survival." John felt a chill spread across his body. Her words felt too final, too confident. He didn't know if he had made the right decision, but there was no turning back now. He had no other choice. "Now," she continued, "you will sleep. Rest. Your body needs time to adjust. And when you wake, I will be there to guide you through the next steps of your survival." Before John could respond, the comms fell silent again. He sat there for a moment, trying to absorb everything that had just happened. His heart was pounding in his chest, his mind still reeling from the conversation. But one thing was certain: the alien vampire was his only hope. He had agreed to her terms, and now he had to live with the consequences. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of his decision settling heavily on his shoulders. As he closed his eyes, exhaustion finally taking over, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of future awaited him, bound to this powerful alien who had promised him survival in exchange for something he didn't fully understand. The cold, eerie silence of the station surrounded him, but somewhere in the back of his mind, he could feel her presence, waiting, watching, as she had promised. And he knew that from this moment on, his life would never be the same again. John woke up with a start, his eyes snapping open to the dim glow of the station's emergency lights. His body felt strange, heavier than it had the night before. His head was throbbing with a dull ache, and there was a dry, uncomfortable sensation in his throat. He had barely slept, and the cold in the room seemed to have grown worse overnight. The once bearable chill now gnawed at his bones, a constant reminder that time was running out. The alien woman's voice echoed in his mind, calm and clear, as though she had never left. "It is time for you to adjust, human. You will feel the effects soon. Do not fear them. You will live, as promised." John struggled to sit up, feeling a strange sensation running through his veins, like something was shifting inside of him. His breath came in shallow gasps, and his skin seemed more sensitive than usual, tingling with a strange energy he couldn't explain. He looked down at his hands, but everything seemed normal. Yet there was an odd weight to them, a feeling that something was off, even though nothing had visibly changed. He stumbled to his feet, pushing through the fog of confusion in his mind. His eyes scanned the room, and he realized just how much worse things had become. The lights flickered weakly, and the hum of the station's failing systems was the only sound filling the silence. "How long have I been out?" he muttered to himself, rubbing his temples. Suddenly, the alien's voice came again, smooth and almost soothing. "You have rested for as long as needed. Your body is now adapting to my influence. The change is not instant, but it will be complete in time." John clenched his fists, trying to suppress the rising panic inside him. The idea of being changed, of losing control over his own body, was terrifying. He had agreed to this deal, but now that he was experiencing the effects, he wasn't sure if it had been the right decision. "How much longer before I'm fully changed?" he asked, his voice rough as he spoke into the empty room. Her voice responded without hesitation. "Not long. Your body will adapt more quickly than you think, but fear not. I will take only what I need. You will not lose yourself entirely." John closed his eyes, trying to steady his breath. He didn't want to lose himself. He didn't want to become something else. But the pain in his head and the strange sensations running through him made it hard to ignore the fact that the deal he had made was already taking its toll. His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden flicker of the station's lights. Something shifted in the air, and for a moment, the temperature seemed to rise. Then, as if responding to his fear, the alien's voice filled the room once more. "You are not alone, human," she said, her voice strangely comforting. "I am with you, even now. You must trust me." John froze. He couldn't explain it, but he felt a presence in the room, as if she were standing right behind him, watching him. The sensation was almost tangible, like she was breathing down his neck, though he could see nothing. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice small with uncertainty. "I can't see you. Why can't I see you?" Her laughter was soft, almost playful, but it sent a chill down his spine. "I am not here in the way you understand. But soon, we will be closer than you think." John's heart raced, and the fear he had been holding back crept up on him again. He wasn't sure if it was the alien's power, her influence, or simply his own paranoia. But the sense that something was watching him, controlling him, was overwhelming. He glanced around the room, half expecting to see her standing there, but there was no one. He took a deep breath, trying to regain control of himself. The reality of his situation was sinking in. There was no escaping this deal. The alien had him in her grip, and he was already beginning to feel the consequences of the bargain. "How can I trust you?" he asked, his voice trembling with fear. "How do I know you're not just using me?" The alien's voice was calm, reassuring. "Trust is earned, human, and you will come to understand that I am not your enemy. I am your savior, in a way. I am giving you the chance to survive, and in return, you will help me. It is a simple exchange." John pressed his hands to his face, trying to block out the rising panic. The alien's words made sense, in a twisted way, but something about her tone unsettled him. She spoke as though she truly believed what she was saying, as though everything she did was for his benefit. But John wasn't sure if he could accept that. He had no idea who or what she was, only that her power was real, and that she was changing him. Slowly, he was becoming something different, something he didn't fully understand. "I don't want to be something else," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "I just want to survive." Her response was soft, almost sympathetic. "You will survive, but you will not remain the same. Survival requires change. You will learn to embrace it." John shuddered at her words. He didn't want to change. He didn't want to become something alien, something he couldn't recognize. But deep down, he knew that if he wanted to live, he had no choice but to accept what was happening to him. The sensation inside him grew stronger, like something was awakening in his very being. It was unsettling, and yet there was a strange comfort in it, as though the alien woman's power was slowly merging with his own, making him stronger, more aware. He couldn't deny the pull, the sense of something greater than himself stirring within. But that comfort was fleeting, replaced by the gnawing fear that the price of survival might be too high. "What happens now?" John asked, his voice small, barely above a whisper. The alien's voice was calm and assured. "Now you will learn to live with the change. The first part of our arrangement is complete. You are still human, but you are also something more." John closed his eyes, trying to make sense of it all. His survival had come at a cost. But in this moment, he realized something. He wasn't sure if he could ever go back to the life he once knew. And worse, he wasn't sure if he even wanted to. The price of help, it seemed, was just the beginning. The real cost was yet to come. Days passed, and John's life had become something unrecognizable. The station, once a quiet, isolated place of work, now felt like a prison. The constant hum of the failing systems, the cold air, and the strange power that seemed to pulse through him were all reminders of the deal he had made. His body was no longer the same. He felt more aware, more alive, but it came with a price he didn't fully understand. His mind kept drifting back to the alien woman's words. "You are still human, but you are also something more." She had told him that the change would be gradual, but now it seemed like he couldn't escape it. Every day, he felt it more, the sensation of something inside him. Something alien and powerful, shifting and growing stronger. At first, it had been subtle. A strange energy in his fingertips, a heightened sense of awareness, an occasional flash of something unfamiliar in his reflection. But now, it was harder to ignore. He could feel it in the air around him, like he wasn't alone even when no one was near. His senses had sharpened. Sounds that had once been too quiet to notice now echoed clearly in his mind. He could hear the faint buzz of the broken systems, the thud of his own heartbeat, the soft creak of the station's walls, as they slowly gave way to the cold. And yet it wasn't just the physical changes that troubled him. The alien woman's voice was always there, lingering in the background of his thoughts, filling the silence of the station. It was like she was inside his head, her presence constant, watching, waiting. "I'm here, human," her voice would say, soft but unshakable. "I will help you survive, but you must trust me." Trust, that was the problem. He didn't know if he could trust her. She had saved his life, yes, but at what cost? The more he thought about it, the more the question haunted him. Was he still the same person? Or had he already begun to lose himself, piece by piece? One evening, as he sat at the control panel, trying to assess the failing systems once again, he found his mind wandering. The alien had told him that survival required change. That change was necessary to live. But how much change was too much? He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled in directions he didn't understand, that his own will was slipping through his fingers. His fingers hovered over the panel, the glowing buttons casting a faint light on his face. It was becoming harder to focus. His thoughts kept circling back to the alien woman. Why had she chosen him? What had she seen in him? He didn't know the answers, and the uncertainty gnawed at him. Suddenly, the voice came again, as though she had been waiting for this moment. You are confused, human. I can feel your uncertainty. You question the bargain we made. John tensed, hearing her words in his mind, and he couldn't help but speak aloud, as if addressing her directly. I don't know who I am anymore. The alien's voice softened, almost soothing. You are exactly who you were before, human. You are the same, but with the strength to survive. Embrace it. John shook his head, frustration bubbling inside him. I'm not sure I want this strength. I don't want to be someone else. Her reply was calm, almost patient. You are not someone else. You are simply more. And that is the price of survival. He clenched his fists. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of this. You told me you were saving me. But what if? What if I don't want your help anymore? There was a long pause. For a moment, the station felt silent. His pulse thundered in his ears, and he could feel his chest tighten. Had he said too much? Was there a way back now? He had asked for help, but the consequences were becoming too much to bear. Finally, the alien spoke, her voice soft but resolute. You cannot turn back. You have made your choice, and I will help you fulfill it. But remember, human, what you call a curse, others might see as a blessing. John looked down at his hands, the faint glow of his fingertips casting shadows on the console. He didn't know what to feel anymore. He wanted to fight it, to reject the changes, but deep down, he knew he couldn't. Survival meant adapting, and that was something he had no choice but to accept. Still, the doubts remained. Could he really accept what was happening to him? Could he live with the knowledge that his very essence was being altered, piece by piece? The alien vampire woman had promised him survival, but at what cost? And was it worth it? The voice came again, quieter this time, almost as if she could sense his inner turmoil. You are not alone, John. I am always with you, guiding you, protecting you. Her words should have reassured him, but instead, they left him feeling more isolated than ever. Was this how it was always going to be? Would he forever feel like a puppet with an unseen hand pulling the strings? He was no longer sure who was in control, him or the alien. He stood up, shaking off the cold that had settled deep into his bones, and looked out of the small window at the stars. The galaxy stretched out before him, vast and unknown. He had once thought he understood his place in it, a simple engineer on a quiet station. But now, everything had changed. He wasn't just an engineer anymore. He was something more, something tied to an ancient, powerful alien being. What do I do now? He whispered to the empty room. The alien's voice, now more gentle than ever, responded. You do what you must to survive, John. And when the time comes, you will understand the purpose of this change. John stood still, staring out into the endless void. The stars seemed so far away, unreachable. But he knew, deep inside, that no matter how much he resisted, the alien's influence was already woven into his very being. The change was inevitable. And as much as he feared it, part of him knew that survival would require more than he was ready to give. It would require everything. John had spent days, perhaps weeks, caught in the strange grip of the alien's power. The station was becoming more of a tomb than a place of refuge. He could feel it in his bones, the isolation, the weight of the silence that surrounded him. The alien's influence had settled into his mind, and though he could fight it, part of him had grown accustomed to the strange power she had given him. It was as if he had become both more and less than human. But today, something felt different. For the first time since the station's systems had begun to fail, he felt the stirrings of hope. A way out. The alien woman had promised him survival, but what if he could escape her grasp? What if he could find a way to break free from the change she had quietly bound around him? The air in the control room was thick, the monitors flickering weakly. John's eyes scanned the displays as he tried to assess the situation. The station's power was nearly depleted, and the life support systems had started to fail again. The cold had become unbearable. He had no choice. If he didn't act soon, the entire station would collapse, and he would be trapped here with no escape. "I can't stay here forever," John muttered to himself, the words almost lost in the hum of the failing equipment. He was beginning to understand the depth of the bargain he had made. The alien had given him survival, but at what cost? His connection to her had grown stronger each day, and he was starting to feel like a puppet on a string. She had promised to protect him, to help him survive, but it came with conditions he wasn't sure he could accept. John closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The change inside him was undeniable now. His senses had sharpened, his strength increased, but at the same time, he could feel something else, something darker, something that wasn't entirely his own. He had become part of something bigger than himself, and that scared him more than anything. As he sat there, feeling the weight of his thoughts, the alien woman's voice entered his mind once more. It was smooth, almost hypnotic, and it filled the space around him. "You are ready to leave, John. I can feel your desire to escape. But remember, you cannot outrun what you have become." Her words sent a chill down his spine, but he forced himself to focus. He couldn't let her control him any longer. If he was going to survive, truly survive, he had to find a way out. "I don't want to be controlled anymore," he whispered, the words barely escaping his lips. "I just want to be free." The alien's voice softened, as if she were trying to soothe him. "You are free, John. You are more than you ever were. You have the power to shape your own fate." But John didn't believe her. Not anymore. He had been willing to trust her when his life had been on the line. But now, as his mind cleared, he saw the truth. She was using him. She was feeding off of him, taking more than he had realized. She had promised survival, but what kind of survival was it if it came at the cost of his own humanity? His decision was made. He would find a way out. He couldn't stay here any longer. He couldn't live like this. John stood up from the chair, feeling the strange energy course through his body. His hands clenched into fists as he approached the control panel. He wasn't sure what he was doing yet, but he knew he couldn't keep waiting for her to offer a way out. This was his life, and it was time to take control of it. He started to work quickly, trying to bypass the station's security systems. The alien had told him he had power now, that he could do things he had never imagined. His fingertips brushed over the console, and he could feel the energy flowing through him, as though he could feel the station itself. The screens flickered and buzzed in response, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if it was his doing or the alien's influence. "John, stop." The alien's voice cut through his thoughts. "You cannot escape. You belong to me now." He gritted his teeth, ignoring her. He had made the decision. He couldn't go back now. He had to get out, and if the alien didn't want to help him, then he would do it alone. His fingers flew over the controls as he worked to unlock the main airlock. The alien had promised him survival, but he had never agreed to live in her shadow. He had never agreed to be her pawn. The control panels beeped, the systems responding to his commands. But it was too late. The alien's voice grew more insistent, more forceful. "You cannot do this, John. You are mine." But he was already moving. The airlock released with a soft hiss, and the cold air rushed into the room, followed by the sound of rushing wind. John turned quickly, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger. The door to the outside was open. He didn't hesitate. He had no idea where he was going, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't stay in the station. He couldn't stay connected to the alien. He had to break free, and this was his chance. John stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest as he crossed the threshold of the station. The cold, open space stretched out before him, the stars gleaming in the distance. He had no ship, no supplies, nothing but the power inside him and the hope that he could survive on his own. For the first time in what felt like forever, John felt a sense of freedom. He wasn't sure where he was going, But he knew that this was his escape. He was no longer bound to the alien's will. He had taken control of his own fate. But even as he stepped out into the void, he could feel her presence, like a shadow at the back of his mind. The alien wasn't going to let him go that easily. She would try to pull him back, try to reclaim him, but John was done being a puppet. This was his fight now, and he was going to win. John floated in the cold emptiness of space, his heart pounding as the station behind him grew smaller and smaller. The blackness of space stretched out before him, endless and silent, a vast void that seemed both welcoming and terrifying. He had escaped. He had finally made the choice to leave the alien vampire's grasp, but now the reality of his decision was setting in. The station was gone. He had no ship, no supplies, and no plan. But he was free. Free from the constant presence of the alien, free from the pull of her power, free from the deal that had promised him survival at such a high cost. He felt the strange energy still inside him, the power she had given him. His body was stronger, his senses sharper, but at the same time, he could feel her influence lingering, like a shadow just out of reach. It wasn't something he could escape so easily. The change inside him had taken root, and there was no going back. He wasn't sure if he wanted to go back, but the thought of what he had become still unsettled him. "John, you cannot run from me forever." The alien's voice whispered in his mind, smooth and calm as ever. "You are mine, and you will always return to me." He clenched his fists, trying to ignore the familiar, chilling sound of her voice. It was like a ghost that haunted his thoughts, following him no matter how far he ran. The alien had made her claim on him, but he had fought back. He had rejected her, taken control of his own fate. And yet, part of him still felt her presence, still heard her words echoing in his mind. "I'm free," he muttered to himself, more to reassure himself than anything. "I'm free." The coldness of space bit at his skin, reminding him of how vulnerable he truly was. He had escaped the alien's control, but now he had to survive on his own. His breath came out in quick gasps as he looked around, trying to make sense of the situation. There was nothing but the vast emptiness of space, and he was drifting in the middle of it. He didn't know where to go, didn't know what he would do next. The station was gone. His only means of survival had disappeared with it. He had nothing. But as he floated, the hopelessness began to sink in. He had made a choice, but now the consequences were staring him in the face. The stars twinkled coldly in the distance, offering no comfort, no answers. He could feel the pull of the alien vampire's power still inside him, like an invisible tether that connected him to her. No matter how far he drifted, she would always be there, lurking in the shadows of his mind. He could never escape that part of himself, no matter how hard he tried. And then a thought struck him. He couldn't stay out here forever. He couldn't just drift in space and wait to die. He had survived once, and he could do it again. Maybe he didn't need the alien's help. Maybe he had the strength to survive on his own. John clenched his teeth and pushed himself forward, kicking off from the wreckage of the station. His body, infused with the strange power she had given him, responded with surprising strength. He didn't know where he was going, but he couldn't stay here. He couldn't let himself be consumed by the fear or the overwhelming sense of isolation that gripped him. He had to move. He had to keep going. The cold, empty vastness of space didn't care about his struggles. It didn't care about his fears. It was indifferent to his survival. But John had something the void didn't have: the will to survive. As he drifted further, he noticed a faint signal on his communicator. It was weak, barely noticeable, but it was there. Someone or something was out there, just beyond the reach of his senses. He had no idea what it was, but it was his only hope. It could be another ship, another station, anything that could offer him a chance to survive. John forced himself to focus, his instincts kicking in. He adjusted the frequency on the communicator, trying to make the signal clearer. The alien's voice still echoed in his mind, urging him to stop, to return, but he refused. He had chosen this path, and he wasn't going to turn back now. "John," the alien's voice whispered again, her tone gentle but firm. "You cannot outrun me. You cannot run from your destiny." John's grip on the communicator tightened, his breath ragged. "I'm not running," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "I'm just choosing to live." He focused again, the faint signal growing stronger. Whatever it was his only chance. He had no idea if it was a rescue team or just another signal in the vastness of space, but he had to take the chance. It was all he had. The alien's voice faded for a moment, as if she were considering his words. "You cannot escape what you are, John," she said, her voice softer now, almost as if she were trying to warn him. "You may survive, but you will always carry me with you. Always." John didn't respond. He didn't need to. He knew she was right in some ways. He would always carry the changes inside him, always feel the lingering presence of the alien woman. But that didn't mean he was hers. That didn't mean he had to be her prisoner. With a final push, John locked onto the signal and began heading in its direction. His heart raced with a mixture of hope and fear. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he had a chance. He had survived this far, and he would keep fighting, no matter what. He wasn't sure what awaited him out there in the cold emptiness of space, but one thing was certain: he was going to face it on his own terms.